Our assessment for this project was the Diagnostic Evaluation of Language Variation, also called the DELV. In this presentation, we will provide an overview of the assessment, explain the test properties, how to administer the test, as well as provide sample items from the norm-referenced assessment. First, we will start with an overview of the assessment. There are 3 separate tests that belong to the DELV assessment package. These include the screening test, criterion reference test, and the norm reference test. The first part of the assessment is the DELV screening test. It serves as a way to identify the degree of language variation from mainstream American English, meaning that it can be used with any dialect of English. In addition to this, it screens to determine the risk for a language disorder. The score of this part of the screening test determines diagnostic risk and future actions that should follow. Another part of the DELV assessment package is the DELV Criterion Reference Assessment. It assesses the child based on 4 domains of language, which include syntax, pragmatics, semantics, and phonology. Administration and test stimuli are the same as the norm-referenced assessment, which will be discussed later. However, it differs in scoring, as the child's score is compared to age-based criterion reference cut scores. Each domain is categorized on a 4-point spectrum from weakness to strength. The administration time for this assessment takes 45 to 50 minutes. The third part of the assessment package, and the assessment that we will focus on during this presentation, is the DELV Norm-Referenced Assessment. Similar to the Criterion Reference Assessment, it assesses a child's language skills in the 4 domains stated previously. It provides rankings and age-equivalent norms to quantify the child's performance. The purpose of this assessment is to identify the speech and language disorders or delays in children. Because the test measures universal aspects of language, it can be used to determine a language disorder regardless of the English dialect of the child.
Now we will discuss the properties of the test. The norm-referenced assessment was determined best fit for children from age 4 to age 9 years, 11 months. It is also noted that, although it is suitable for any English dialect, it is best suited for children that have English as their first language. The norm-referenced assessment takes about 45 to 50 minutes to administer. The test has corresponding materials that include an examiner's manual, a stimulus book with all the picture items for the test, and a record form. It is important that this test be administered in a quiet, well-lit room with no distractions. The norm-referenced assessment was developed on a standardized sample of about 900 children. Age distribution was about 100 subjects in 9 age groups between 4 years to 9 years and 11 months. The subjects had a range of abilities and included both those typically developed and those with language disorders. About 80% of the sample spoke the mainstream American English dialect. 8% spoke African American English, 8% spoke Southern American English, and 3.5% spoke a different dialect variation. 50% of the sample was female, while 50% was male. The sample was represented many races and ethnicities. 16.4% were African American, about 5% were Asian American, 63% were Caucasian, 14% were Hispanic, with the remaining 1.3% as an unspecified ethnicity. Many types of reliability were examined closely for the DELV norm-referenced assessment. None of the different types had an average reliability correlation coefficient that was below 0.88. As a result, this test is deemed reliable. Validity for the norm-referenced assessment was primarily determined using 3 pieces of evidence. First, the content in the test was created to be culturally fair for all English-speaking children, particularly those who speak African American English. Additionally, background research was conducted to ensure that the content of this test accurately assessed the language being targeted. The developers also assessed validity by comparing results of the DELV to the SELF-4 and PLS-4. The results were similar, demonstrating that the DELV accurately tests children's language and articulation skills. Measures for specificity and sensitivity were also used as pieces of evidence. As you can see, there is excellent sensitivity and specificity at 1 standard deviation below the mean for classifying language disorders, while lower sensitivity and specificity for articulation disorders is still considered good at 1 standard deviation below the mean. Overall, there is a strong specificity throughout. However, you can see that sensitivity decreases dramatically at 2 standard deviations below the mean, which is something to be aware of when interpreting the results. The following is a summary of the DELV assessment in the form of Dahlhahn's Diagnostic Evaluation Checklist regarding the development of this assessment. For letters F and G on number 3, the first number represents the test to determine language disorders. The second number represents the test to determine articulation disorder.
Now that we've discussed the properties of the assessment, here's more information about how it should be administered. Like previously stated, the assessment should be administered in a quiet, well-lit room with no distractions. The examiner and the child should be seated so that they can both see the picture stimuli and the child can attend to the examiner's verbal commands. It is important to establish a little bit of rapport with the child before starting the exam. The record form should be filled with demographic information and chronological age information before recording responses to the test items. The test is scored in several steps. First, circle the letter with the response that matches the child's response, or circle other if it is different than the provided response options. Some sets of questions are scored by circling 2 or 1 for the correct response, as indicated by the blue font, and 0 for an incorrect response or no response at all. The scores are all then summarized into subtotal for each subdomain. The raw scores can then be calculated by adding the subtotal scores for each domain. Scores for the norm reference test are compared to age equivalent norms and percentile ranks. This information can be used to compare the child's performance to other age-matched peers.
Finally, here are some test items that you may see in each section of the norm reference DELV test. The phonology domain assesses the child's ability to produce consonant blends that are common to most varieties of English as a first language. The examiner starts out this section by providing instructions to the child in an example trial item. They would say, "I'm going to show you some more pictures and tell you what I see. Then I want you to say exactly what I said. Let's try one. I see a baby. You say it." The examiner will then continue on to the scoring items. For example, the examiner will score the child's performance on the ST cluster in the phrase, "I see a dusty table." The syntax domain assesses WH questions, passive sentences, and articles. The WH question section is designed to measure a child's understanding of complex WH questions. Directions and an example test item are included on the slide. Example items are also included on the following slides for the remaining subsections and domains. The passive item subsection is designed to assess a child's understanding of passive sentence constructions. The article items were designed to assess a child's knowledge of the underlying grammatical rules that regulate which article should be used in a given linguistic context.
The pragmatics domain assesses communicative role-taking, short narratives, and question asking. The communicative role-taking section of test items is designed to assess a child's understanding of what they should say in a particular communicative situation and what speech act is needed. The short narrative section is designed to assess a child's ability to contrast characters, link events in time, and include references to the mental states of the characters when telling a simple story. The question asking subtest was designed to assess a child's ability to ask the question needed to obtain specific information. The child is required to ask who, what, where, why, how, and double WH questions.
The semantics domain assesses verb contrast, preposition contrast, quantifiers, and fast mapping. This subtest was administered to a 6-year-old, and video examples are included in the following slides. The purpose of the verb contrast subsection is to assess the child's understanding of the relationship between verbs of the same meaning type. Here is a small clip that provides an example.
The man isn't walking, he is
Crawling,
The man isn't entering the building, he is
leaving the building.
Preposition contrast is developed to assess the child's understanding of different types of prepositions.
You're working really hard. I love it. I'm going to show you some more pictures and tell you some things about each picture. I will start a sentence and then you finish it just like before. Let's begin. She's not looking at the radio, she's listening.
She's listening to the radio.
She's not lifting the chair, she's sitting
Under the chair.
The purpose of the quantifiers section is to assess understanding of the meaning of every and what the word every modifies in sentence contexts.
I'm going to show you some more pictures and ask you questions about them. I want you to answer the questions. Let's begin. Is every man riding a horse?
Mm-mm.
Why not?
I don't know.
Okay.
Fast mapping is designed to assess a child's ability to extract the meaning of new words from sentence context.
We're cruising through this. I'm going to show you some pictures and tell you something about them. Then I'm going to ask you questions about the pictures and want you to point to the answers. It is okay for you to point to the same picture more than once. Let's begin. The boy is pouring the juice. Here are things in the pictures. I want you to show me which one was the pourer. Which one got poured? Which one did he pour the juice into? To help you remember what I said, I'm going to say it again for you. The boy is pouring the juice. Which one was pourable? Okay. The following slides include example scoring from the semantic subsection of the norm reference assessment that was administered and shown previously in the videos.
These are examples of scoring the verb contrast and preposition contrast items in the semantics domain of the DELV. It is worth noting that in addition to numeric scoring, some test items require recording the child's response verbatim.
The scores that we recorded for this domain are as stated in the table. The child has a chronological age of a little more than 6 years, but had a test age equivalent of 9 years and 3 months, so she did quite well compared to other peers.
And that concludes our presentation on the DELV. Thanks!